Welcome back to Counsel Confidential. My name is Megan, and I'm a licensed counselor here in the US, commenting today on Bryan Kohberger taking a plea deal. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? I know this is kind of old news by now, but my reaction to this is actually reacting to everybody else's reaction. I am kind of blown away by how much people are upset about this plea deal. Let's see if we can explore why everybody's so mad, if we can understand why they're so mad, and in my opinion, let's see if I think they should be mad or not. So let's get into it. Bryan Kohberger accepted a plea deal. We all know this by now. He is going to be sentenced probably to multiple life sentences here in about a week, I believe on July 22nd or 23rd. But this was surprising. This was surprising to a lot of people. Most importantly, it was surprising to the families of the victims of this murder. Steve Gonsalves has been very outspoken about how unhappy he has been with this whole process almost from day one, but he was very, very upset and offended that the prosecutors allegedly did not give him or any of the families a heads up that this was going to happen. It sounds like this all occurred very quickly. It sounds like it was something where the families got an email with a letter attached letting them know that this was what was going to happen, and they only had about a day to get their affairs in order to be able to travel to Idaho and listen to Bryan Kohberger admit that he was guilty. As a human, as a mom, as a wife, as a whatever, I can understand the upset on some level, right? I can understand feeling left out. I can understand feeling like your feelings weren't being taken into account. But what I have trouble with, here's what I have some trouble with, not just with Steve Gonsalves's reaction, because he's a grieving father. I can't pretend to understand what that's like, thank goodness. So I don't want to judge any of the victims' families harshly because I just can't, right? We can't judge how someone grieves. However, there are a lot of people in the media who seem to be very upset as well. Nancy Grace, for example, she was one of the first videos that I watched after this news came out, and she was just livid and upset, clutching her pearls about how could they do this. Judge Liz, she has a YouTube channel. The judge from the Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, from his trial, she had an opinion about this, saying how, prosecutors shouldn't be using the death penalty as a bargaining chip. I think that's also something that Steve Gonsalves has said, that the death penalty doesn't even mean anything if it's just going to be used as a bargaining chip to get people to confess and plead guilty. Let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk about the death penalty in general in the United States as it currently exists, okay? As it is currently being used and implemented. I watch a lot of true crime, okay? I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a law expert, but I have been watching court cases and following true crime for many, many years. And from what I understand, the death penalty doesn't really have a lot of teeth these days. Number one, appeals. People who are sentenced to death often can file almost limitless appeals, right? They can drag it out for decades. So even if they're convicted and even if they are sentenced to death, the likelihood that those people are going to actually be put to death by lethal injection or the electric chair or a firing squad or whatever is available these days, the likelihood that that actually happens, pretty slim. Pretty slim. We don't see a lot of executions happening on a regular basis across this country. Or at least we're not hearing about it if they are. So that's number one. The appeals process, things getting drawn out, it's just not happening, even if it's a sentence that is given. The other piece is there's a shortage of the medications that are used in lethal injections, which I believe is why Idaho recently has re-implemented the firing squad, which seems bonkers to me. Like, I don't know what century we're living in anymore, but these days, I guess nothing is surprising. So yeah, so the firing squad is back apparently. But for a lot of states that don't have the firing squad, they can't get their hands on these medications that are used for lethal injection. So Again, even if somebody is convicted, even if somebody is sentenced, even if somebody has a date of execution, sometimes it just can't happen. It just doesn't work. I feel like the idea of the death penalty in this country, it's more of a theory. It's a theoretical sort of idea. It's a fantasy. It's like, sure, we would like to do this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of justice. A lot of people have voted on it, that it is fine, that that's how we want to operate here in this country or in the, various states that allow it. But in practicality, it doesn't seem like it really happens that often. And even in cases that are particularly heinous, such as the Parkland school shooting, where Nicholas Cruz was convicted of that shooting, there was plenty of evidence that it was him. He was convicted, he was sentenced, but at the sentencing, he was sentenced to life in prison, even though he killed a lot of people and he maimed a lot of people and he traumatized almost the entire school. That still was not enough to convince a jury to sentence him to death, even though death penalty was on the table. Which then brings me to another reason I don't fully understand why everyone is so upset about this plea deal.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
A trial is not a guarantee of the death penalty. A trial is not a guarantee of the death penalty. Bryan Kohberger, now we don't have to say allegedly, he did commit 4 murders. Horrific murders, violent murder, bloody murder, awful, awful murder, right? He did it. He said he did it. And even if he hadn't said he did it, there was a lot of evidence, which is probably why he said he did it, because he saw the evidence stacking up against him. And he and his defense team probably couldn't really see a way to wiggle out of it. Even if he was convicted by a jury of his peers, which no guarantee, but even if he was convicted, there is no promise that he would be sentenced to death. And so I feel like, from my perspective, where I'm sitting, just as an outside observer, I'm not, again, I'm not a family member. I don't have personal experience losing a loved one to violence. So I'm, somewhat hesitant to speak out of turn. But from just a human perspective, I don't quite understand all of the rage and all of the upset about a plea deal. Because what this does is guarantees that Bryan Kohberger will be behind bars for the rest of his life. It's taking away his opportunity to appeal. It is taking away any risk that a juror or two might disagree or might not believe the evidence or might not have found the case from the state to be convincing. It takes away the what if with the sentencing because, again, if a jury was part of sentencing, we don't know that every juror would agree with the death sentence. And we don't know that the judge would agree to a death sentence if it was solely up to the judge. So I really think that this kind of is a best case scenario. Now, the other part that is upsetting to a lot of people is that there wasn't a demand from the prosecution that Bryan Kohberger would give a full confession, that he would give details about what he did, about the sequence of events, about his motivation, about why. And quite honestly, I don't really think that we need to worry too much about that because if we look at the type of person that he is, from what we have observed so far that with publicly available information, I don't think it'll be long before he gives some pretty detailed interviews. In fact, I'm not sure if this is confirmed or not, but I did hear that he already has agreed to an interview this fall. Okay, so I don't think it'll be long before we hear his thoughts. And also, if you think about somebody like Chris Watts, for example, we'll never really know the truth. We'll never fully know the truth of exactly what was going through his head. We'll never fully know the truth of exactly the order of events. We'll never fully know the truth of all of the details with the Shanann and Cece and Bella Watts murders because he had an initial story that was sort of inspired by the detectives that were interviewing him. Then he had another story. And then he had these jailhouse interviews where he told yet another story. And then I think there was even another version that he told to this lady who wrote a book about him. So when you're dealing with somebody with no moral compass, and you're dealing with somebody with no empathy for other human beings, and you're dealing with somebody who is really all about their own comfort and their own glory and their own narrative about how things are or should be or will be, we might never know the truth, right? We might never know the truth. And to be quite honest, I know we're always looking for a why with these horrible things that happen to people, but I don't really think there's ever a good why. I don't think there will ever be like a satisfying answer. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.